Here we go. Hey, everybody. Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen leading the movement for movement. Of course, I can't lead it alone, and we'll get into that. Welcome to another edition of the Autism Fitness Pro interview series on Tuesday Training or whenever you're watching this. And of course, if you have every and all interest in autism fitness, go to autismfitness.com. But let's get into this right now because I'm excited. We have the now doctor. Can I call you doctor now?
You may.
Dr. Chrissy Blanchard-Alworth. There was a middle name in there too that I
That's
missed.
okay. I think, Dr. Blanchard-Alworth, 3 words, 6 syllables, it just rolls right off the tongue.
And
So
I want to get right into what your dissertation research was all about, but very quickly. So we met in 2018,
2017, I think
17. Okay, so that was still the first year of the certification.
it was.
I remember that certification. That was when I was doing the in-persons a lot or
Yep.
exclusively. At my very good friend Bill Myers' gym, who I just spoke with a couple weeks ago too. He's still in Virginia. They're up in Chesapeake now. Um, that was I remember it being a particularly awesome group. And of course, of all these things, I remember there being a particularly great spot for lunch across the street. Fresh Market, which I thought was like a Whole Foods ripoff until I realized that Fresh Market was a thing.
Right.
So anyway, so starting from there, you and I met. That's a little odd detail there, and you showed up in the certification, and I
Yep.
remember you telling me, the reason that you wanted to get in all this, but please, from your perspective, you find autism fitness and where were you at the time?
Well, I was working at the Center for Autism and in Virginia, and I was the adapted physical education teacher. And so I started there in 1996.
Mhm.
So I had been teaching quite a long time. And as I was teaching, I always felt there was something missing from, for a curriculum
Mhm.
because our school served students with, you would think the term now is level 3
Yeah,
autism.
yeah,
So
profound autism. Yeah, level 3 profound autism.
well, yeah, and we want to be careful with our words, but I would say high needs
Yeah.
possibly is a respectful way of saying
Mhm.
it. So so there are, the fitness professionals out there know there is a myriad of programs, and it specifically, you've got step, and you've got, ripped, and you've got cycling, and you've got all these, and it's a one and done thing. You go in on a weekend, you take the test, they don't really care, they just
Yeah.
want their uh money, and then ominous dominus, go in peace, you can now teach
Yeah.
whatever. And so I was really looking for something that was more geared towards folks with those higher needs
Mm.
with autism.
Yeah.
And I my background, like yours, is similar. It's in physical education. I know you're more exercise science, but I had a lot of exercise science
Mhm.
too. So I needed something that was based in evidence-based
Yeah.
practices,
Hmm.
right? That's the law. That's special educators are by law bound to use evidence-based practices in our teaching. So I'm looking. There's really nothing out there for what I have called my people,
Yeah.
right? My people.
Hmm.
And folks with a little bit more complex needs. So lo and behold, I come upon this something on the internet, a flyer or a post from you,
Hmm.
and I read it and I said, "This is it.
Hmm.
That I know this is it." And it's in Norfolk, and it's right down the street from me. Let me do it. Went to my school and said please, and they said sure. Supported me in it. I'm very, very, very fortunate to have had a school that supported physical education and exercise and gross motor for our population. So one thing led to another. I went down. The certification, I really, I sold it to my principal
Mhm.
because I said, look, it is not a one and done.
Mhm.
You have to take an exam and you have to pass the exam, and it's a rigorous process. And so first you have the practical, and then you have the exam, and there's follow up.
Mhm.
I said, this is the real deal. I really feel like this is the real deal. So yeah, so I got certified, and it was amazing because it was the first certification that I have had that I got certified over the weekend, and then on Monday I put it into practice on Monday.
Mhm.
And I was able to translate what I had learned through the certification into the classroom. And it really did change the trajectory of my career
Mhm.
because I felt that I was strong in my role,
Mhm.
but I there was just something missing about the tools to do my job, right?
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because
Mhm.
especially for other PE and adapted PE teachers out there, that who are so dedicated, and what I, in my experience, and I want you to speak to this because you can speak to it much better. Because again, more on the exercise science than on the PE side. Um, the programming that they are not given, but I guess the pedagogy or how it's given in textbook or in academic settings, like, okay, this is adaptive PE. And I've had so many conversations with PE professionals who have been through the certification where I ask, well, what were you learning in when you were getting your degree or your certification in PE and adaptive PE? And they're like, well, it was kind of like these, kind of doing sports, but not really. And that was a resounding answer that I got from a lot of other
Okay.
people.
Wow. All right. So, um, and not to tangent, but um, the the pedagogy and the undergrad and master's degree training
Mhm.
to teach PE in many states, not California, but in Virginia, you just need to teach adaptive PE. You need one adaptive PE course in your entire physical education program.
Okay.
One,
Yeah.
right? And then within that one program, they'll probably hit on autism,
Mhm.
but it might be one lecture, right? So, because you've got to consider all, intellectual disabilities plus physical
Sure.
disabilities, right? And so, as an adapted PE teacher, we know that it's really you wear two hats. You're a PE teacher, but you're a special educator,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Yeah, so to have the tools to do your job, physical education, but you may not know how that translates into adapted physical
Mm.
education for our students with
Yeah.
autism.
Yeah.
So right, so you've got what I had found. This is I don't know if the other folks you talked to had found this, but right, yeah. So you're following the curriculum.
Mhm.
We need to follow the gen ed curriculum.
Right.
So you've got health and wellness and recreation and sport,
Mhm.
and it seems to, we've progressed, but there was a lot of sport
Yeah.
emphasis
Hmm.
and not personal wellness. So around the 90s that changed. So that was a good shift.
Hmm.
But at the same time, within the curriculum, you needed to expose them to volleyball, basketball,
Right.
baseball,
Yeah. And
the
that's a lot
whole
that's exactly what I'm talking about. I still
right.
hear a lot of that. I agree that it's gotten better. When I say
Better.
better, there's definitely an asterisk there. There's
Right.
some caveats to that. But yeah, and I still hear that today. Like we're doing a unit on baseball, and the point that I've tried to make, and that there's even a whole section in the certification about this. It's not that sports are bad. It's just
Right.
that asking the golden litmus test question of what is actually happening.
Exactly. Exactly. And so what's happening and how is this, what's happening in the present moment when you're teaching this sport? And is it soccer? And are they engaged or are they picking the clover in
Yeah.
the field?
Yeah.
And that goes for typical, neurotypical people and neurodiverse people,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Right. So, but backing it up, right?
Hmm.
Can they squat? Can they bend over? Can they do deadlift? Can they do these things, overhead
Yeah.
presses? Can they do these things to participate in the sports? Right. So, but yeah, there was a lot of emphasis on sport. And, through my research, I found that our the neurodiverse population is not necessarily getting access to those sports and those community organizations and those environments.
Mhm.
So, but in terms of teaching to get the tools to do your job,
Mhm.
yeah, we've got the basketballs, we've got the volleyballs, we've got, and we have got adapted equipment. That's great. But again, to dial it back a little bit, to scale it, do they have the core strength? Do they have that strength throughout the kinetic chain
Yeah.
to participate in these? And so what we need to do, what I did with Autism Fitness is I come back and I say, oh, this is a game changer because every one of my students can participate I can modify it and adapt it in a way that they can participate. Right. So I've had students who use wheelchairs, students with a limited mobility in their hands because they don't have fingers, things like that. Right. So can always figure out a way for them to access a battle rope, access a sandbell, access a band.
Mhm.
And so these are very simple things that we can do that are exciting to them. And that's where after I got certified, I'm like, my kids are going to be on fire for this.
Mhm.
They are going to be on fire because I am providing them with this safe neoprene sandbell,
Mhm.
and they can take it over their head and slam it on the floor.
Mhm.
And they are like, what is happening? Just the look, right? Because a lot
Yeah.
of my students were pre-verbal or nonverbal or
Mhm.
use augmentative and assistive communication, right?
Right.
And so they're looking at me like, you're going to teach me this? And I said, yes.
Mhm.
And the other thing too is when they came in the class, hi athletes, how are my athletes?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's that shift of perspective and that shift of access to what they need to build
Mhm.
physically to then access sports or community, access the rest of the curriculum, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go back. I mean, there's so many things to dive into there, but I'd like to go back to you spoke about, getting the curricular, going through that practical on Sunday and then implementing the program on Monday. So what was it like, that first day or even that first week that you were implementing the program and the change from what had what had been the programming prior to what you were innovating and implementing, that first week.
Right. Well, one of the biggest things was behavior specific praise,
Yeah.
right? BSP,
Mhm.
it was drilled in, it was
And
almost,
still is.
almost, right? Almost a discrete trial, in fact, so you were giving behavior specific praise when we praised specifically.
Yeah.
And so I came back and I was very clear to my paraprofessionals
Hmm.
that this is now what we're doing.
Hmm.
We are going to use behavior specific praise, and I'm modeling it for my paras, number one. And number two, I am praising them when they use behavior specific praise for with the
Oh yeah,
students.
the meta. I call that meta praise now.
Yes,
You're
that's a great
you're
term.
providing behavior specific praise for them providing behavior specific praise.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So when I came, that shift on Monday
Mhm.
was, um, it's easy to get overwhelmed. You have so much knowledge, you have so much energy, and you want to use it all. And I was like, okay, no, we're going to break it down, and I'm going to work with my paras, right? We had some
Mhm.
fantastic paras. And I say, all right, y'all, how many times a day do you say good job? And well, not many. Well, yeah, let's video it and let's see.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, and take some data. And
Yeah.
guess what? Your girl, good job all day long. Oh
Mhm.
my word, stop, right? So that really was an eye-opening experience
So
for
you took
me.
data collection on yourself.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's dedication.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was like, okay, I'm here. I need to get, ooh, that's not good. So I want my, so I was kind of a researcher before I was a
Yeah.
researcher, right? But it's data. We
Mhm.
we go with the data, right? What do we say? In God we trust, all others take data, right? So it's that's what I did. And I think it helped to um, to connect with the paras that we're all on the same page. We're all trying to do this.
Mhm.
I'm learning right along with you, and we're going to break it down. We're going to do sandbell slams first. We're going to get those, and of course, we only have a certain amount of time within the class, and we have
Yeah.
to get to all the curriculum.
Sure.
But after that, throughout the years, autism fitness was our warm up.
Mhm.
And then in the beginning of the year, it was the main focus,
Mhm.
right? So we
Mhm.
used the whole time to work on these exercises so that eventually they were going to be able to come in and warm up with the autism fitness, do their strength and training, and
Mhm.
then get a piece of, soccer, basketball,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I went a little tangent.
No,
Go ahead.
that was perfect. It gave such a great example of how you would implement it because there are steps along the way too. And in discussing, paraprofessionals, when you have other people who are involved in that process and people who are interacting and working with and guiding those students all day,
Mhm.
being on the same page, and we talk about generalization as well. So I have so many conversations now with certified pros and other professionals, and even in podcasts discussing expectation management and how it is such an important aspect of everything that we do, whether it is communication with the athletes, whether it is communication with parents and family members, communication with other professionals. Because if I have a different expectation for what I need to be doing versus, a paraprofessional, because I haven't bought them into what we're doing and why we're doing and how important their role is in this as well, then I'm saying awesome sandbell slam, that looked great, it was super powerful, and someone else is saying, oh, great job or good job, or because that the importance of that aspect of it, however it may seem small, is big. It's one of those, what I've been referring to lately as small big things as
Okay.
well. So there's a great story that you've shared a number of times with me about one of your athletes who initially was having a really difficult time even getting into the gymnasium who flourished. I don't remember I don't even know if I ever got his name, but would you speak a little bit about that story? Because I think that I look at as one of the great successes of the program, where it's not just about the physical prowess and development. Of course, that's greatly important, but also
Mhm.
those adaptive skills for our athletes.
Right, right. And it's funny because I can't remember who because that happened to quite a few.
Okay,
So, I
even
mean,
better.
yeah, it's true. So we had, it's a spectrum. So we had a students with a lot of different skills, but we had, I think the one young man, um, we are a separate public day program. So small classrooms and even even with that small classroom size, there were students that had one-to-one paras. So we tried to figure out what was going on. Why did the student not want to come into the gym?
Mhm.
And did worked with the behavior specialist and his para and the teacher, and really collaborated speech language pathologist. It was really a great team to figure out why isn't he coming into the gym? And just because he sort of refusing to come into the gym, that doesn't mean that I'm off the hook and I don't do adaptive PE with him,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's on his IEP, it's mandated, it's the law, I got to do it. So we do, okay, let's take these sandbells and put them, we're going to do the exercises in the hall, right?
Yeah.
So we really, I can't remember what that function of the behavior was, whether it was control or noise or lights, whatever it was. But maybe maybe it was too many people in the gym at the
Or
time,
transitioning
right?
to a different environment. Yeah.
Exactly. So we set it all up visually and gave him choices. And anyway, he really enjoyed the battle ropes. And that's something that you can't like take this battle rope, put it in the hallway, and the bell rings and people are changing classes. It's not safe.
You
So
can, but it's going to be interesting.
yeah, and we did. So we, figured it
Yeah.
out. But it's like, okay, buddy, this time we're going to be in here now. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so that was an example. There was another example where we had a young lady. She wouldn't even get off the school bus.
Yeah.
Not get off the school bus, and then that behavior continued within the school, and then she actually her father was an all-star basketball player, and so I mean, she was so athletic, and so I was like, let's make your dad proud. Let's get you going with some of these strength training exercises. And so yeah, so we use the curriculum to motivate them and to give them agency, right? And that's a really nice thing about Autism Fitness is, okay, we're going to do warm up. Do you want to do hurdle steps? And how many, right? And give them that choice, and then use that behavior specific praise to reinforce the exercise and the performance. And so yeah, and the one of the best things this might jump into the IEP meetings. Going
Oh yeah.
into
Yeah, I love your IEP meeting stories.
I love my IEP meeting stories.
You should.
I do, because here is, and then, your APE and your PE teachers out there and your coaches may say, you've got to do valid and reliable assessments, right? And so
I would hope they would say that, are they?
right. Well, that's our job, right? That's our job. So I've got to get these, valid and reliable assessments. So what is that? That's a test of gross motor development. All right, let me do that. Okay, guess what? Less than 0%, their score is less than 0%, right? And that doesn't tell the parent anything.
Yes.
It tells them nothing. And then year after year after year, this is how he or she is doing on this, normed, and I get it.
Yeah,
it's a norm,
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Right. But okay, so here we are, that's fine. But look, here is a PAC profile. This is where he started from. This is amazing. Look at this. And then I had a video for the parents, and they're like, wait, what? I can't get him to do anything at home. I'm like, oh, let me tell you about your athlete. Here you go. Here's a video, here's some pictures. And then, I was told later, so the IEP meetings, they can be, at least maybe an hour or two. And they're talking about some heavy stuff, and and they're speech is coming in and saying, well, we're getting there, it's slow progress, and the teacher's saying we're getting there, and then I come in because I'm teaching, right, and I have 15 minutes to come in and talk to the parent and then get back into the classroom. And I've got a sandbell with me, and I have the bands, and I say, let me tell you about your athlete. And here is the present level of performance. We started here, we're here, this is the goal. And so you might not know what a sandbell is. This is what it is.
Yeah.
And this is a band. And this is a picture of the battle rope. And so it goes from a real deficit downer
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
to a um a, it's a more engaging, a more enthusiastic, more positive tone.
Mhm.
And that I was really proud of that one of the members of the IEP team said, wow, when you come in and you give them all this great information, it really shifts the tone of the meeting. So I always love that story because no parent wants to hear what their kid can't do year after year after year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they may not get this far on the test of gross motor development, and the parent may not care if they can throw a tennis ball with
Right. And
five.
that's just it also. And as a researcher, both past and present, I know how much you appreciate this. And the conversation to have, I always thought was, okay, you have a standardized test, but is it valid? I don't know if it's, the word valid or if it's meaningful. Like, okay, with
Mhm,
bouncing a tennis ball or being able to, to do a forward jump. Okay,
mhm,
it's a demonstration of a physical skill, but does it, when I say meaningful in talking about it from an operational definition, is it generalizable? And if it is generalizable, how important is it really? And of course, we could get into, what is the measure of importance, but it goes back to the foundation of the curriculum itself, which is we know that these compound multi-joint strength exercises build strength in these particular ways and capacities. And so if they can squat, push, pull, press, hinge, and carry in this environment, there's a greater likelihood they're going to be able to do that in other environments, which is a very simple premise.
mhm.
But when you put that up against, oh, well, this is, the standardized gross motor test, it's standardized, but do we want to teach and train towards that? Knowing really, I don't, I would love to debate anybody who would argue that those skills, like bouncing a tennis ball, really has a direct implication on areas of life. I think it's more of um a a way to demonstrate that a skill is already there, that is
Mhm.
probably already going to be there. What I mean by that is if you have a generally athletic 11 or 12 or 13-year-old, they're going to be able to kick a ball even if they don't play soccer. Like
Right.
even if they play golf or they play volleyball, whatever, or they wrestle, they're going to be able to kick a ball because they have general athletic aptitude.
Mhm.
So I don't think that the most of the gross motor tests are out there. And this has been confirmed to me by not only adapted PE, but by a lot of physical therapists also. They're like,
Right.
the standardized test measures these things, but I don't know that these things are important.
Right. And how, I mean, we're talking with our population,
Yeah,
many times it's you are talking about activities of daily life,
sure.
right?
Yeah, 100%.
And yes, number one. Number two, I had a lot of conversations with our high school staff
Hmm.
where the students would be going to class half day and then going into the job site half day.
Yeah.
And when these students don't have the strength to perform their job, they they're very limited in their opportunities going
Hmm.
forward,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think you kind of mentioned that, like the importance of why are we doing this? Why, what's the basis? And we're
Hmm.
doing this because we want those kids to have positive outcomes
Hmm.
in access to the community, access to a job, recreation and leisure, and to really, they have a right to be the best they can be in their body,
Hmm.
right? So So yeah, and too with adapted PE and physical education and coaching, we have just a brief amount of time,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? And so that's one of the things that I think if you know is an important fact that using these autism fitness exercises and using the curriculum, it affects their physical body. Yes, it affects their emotional state, and it affects their mental state because you're not just working on the physical body, you're working on the mental and the emotional because you're giving behavior specific praise,
Mhm.
right? And so that is increasing their confidence
Mhm.
because it's meaningful, right?
Yeah.
So there's those two pieces I think are really important. And not that standardized testing isn't important, not that
Sure.
there's not that link, but in terms of there's the research I think is really important in terms of qualitative research,
Mhm.
right? Quantitative is important, qualitative is important too. How do these students feel about the exercises, and how do they
Yeah.
feel about participating in physical activity?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
another really fascinating line of research as well.
And it has direct implications on the short-term and long-term success of a program as well. When I have a younger athlete, if I have an athlete who's 12 or 13 or 14, I'm not only thinking about, okay, I want their programming to be as good as it can possibly be for them and their body right now,
Mhm.
but if there is that reinforcing quality to it, even if, and I've had plenty of these situations where the athlete isn't exactly thrilled to be doing, the modified push-up or the overhead,
Yeah.
I know that they enjoy their time with me as, as a coach and there's someone guiding them through this. So they're having a good time by proxy of the fact that I have a good, we have a good rapport and a good coaching athlete relationship.
Yeah.
I'll take that because I know that, when that 14-year-old athlete is 24 and 34 and 44, I'm trying to establish a positive relationship with exercise for
Right.
them.
Yeah.
Because if then, they have another good or great coach 5 years from now, 10 years from now, okay, this is sustainable for the athletes who need that one-to-one support in order to guide their program or in order to exercise. And those who are more independent, maybe this is something that they take on as part of their daily lives. So this is it's really crucial not just to have the physical component of it, but to create a situation, an environment in which the athlete feels like they are an active participant and there's some aspect of reinforcement or some aspect of enjoyability for them because
Right.
that's what's going to do it in the long term.
Right. And providing them that agency
Hmm.
that, we are presuming competence.
Yes. Totally.
You, you're presuming competence. Therefore,
Hmm.
you are setting up that expectation that, yeah, here we are. We've got a ways to go, but look at where we're going to go. We're going to get you there, and you're going to get there. That's the other good important piece too, is it's not just me. You have agency in it. The athlete.
Do you,
I,
do you think, I don't think I've ever asked you this, do you think that's one of the reasons, and I'm sure there are a couple, but I'd love to hear it from you, why fitness programming, adapted PE in general, but particularly fitness program is so deprioritized, generally speaking, for the population and yeah, for the entirety of the autism population, regardless of diagnostic, level or capability, because many people I've spoken with, either who have gone through this certification or haven't, parents and family members have said, yeah, they don't really do, PE in our school. I'm sure they do it everywhere. And I've gotten so many of this where parents and family members think that their school, regardless of whether it's public or private, because I've heard it from both, is the only one that's not doing PE. And I found that it's widespread. So the question is really not global, like why, but really, why is this not a priority in in educational programs?
I think my initial response is when let's talk about specifically autism.
Yeah.
When you have that diagnosis, um, and I've seen this with a lot of parents,
Hmm.
they are um, very, very concerned about speech,
Hmm. Yes.
communication,
Hmm.
as absolutely, and that's completely understandable because a
Hmm.
lot of times that's where the behavior is coming in
Sure.
because they don't have that ability to communicate.
Hmm.
So the emphasis, you know, and again, this is my lived experience in a program that with very, very high needs individuals.
Sure.
But, when you can't communicate, that then often leads to behaviors.
Hmm.
And so your focus is we got to get these behaviors under control, self-injurious behaviors or aggressive behaviors. We've got to get that's the focus,
Hmm.
right? And then through that, okay, maybe functional behavior analysis indicates that communication is one of the reasons. And so now we're really focused on how are we going to get this kid to help him communicate, right? And so those priorities become, they become the priorities,
Sure.
and the physical activity is put on hold or pushed to the side.
Hmm.
And also, there may be some emphasis on uh, different therapies.
Hmm.
So they may go to school all day and then they come home and they have a certain type of therapy, and that therapy takes up their time.
Hmm.
And they don't, and it may not be play based if it's
Yeah.
a child, right? It may not. So, um, you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So, it's just a question of time and how much time there is to dedicate to fitness.
Hmm.
And so I do, again, my lived experience, I do think that parents have a lot of pressure to, what do I do? Well, they've got to go to speech, they've got to go to OT, they've got to go to ABA therapy.
Yeah.
And where does that leave them?
Sure.
Right. So there's just only so many hours in the day, right? And
Yeah.
then you've got this kid who's been, in school all day, and
Hmm.
their cognitive load is quite large,
Sure.
right? And so
Hmm.
I would say, hey, let's let school do school,
Hmm.
and then after school, let's see about building more of that fitness, gross motor play into their lives.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I do think we could, as an industry, do a little bit better with that. Maybe not an industry, but a field,
Yeah.
do a little bit better with that.
One of the things I think of when you illuminated all of that was, I think that the emphasis on the emotional well-being is a big one because we kind of the things that we know to be true but don't necessarily act on. Like we know that engaging in vigorous physical activity, i.e., strength training, is going to have most most often is going to have a beneficial effect on emotional regulation for everybody. I mean, we're talking about the
Right.
neurotypical and the neurodivergent population. So it would stand to reason that if we implemented it throughout the day, in a school setting, in an academic, in an educational setting, in a residential setting, that it would be a welcome and healthy, appropriate addition to the other therapies that are supporting that individual. And maybe that's the case that needs to be made stronger, that the fitness component is not just about the physical exercise, developing strength, developing endurance, developing all these other physical qualities. And in addition to that, the buy-in might come from the fact that, yeah, it's going to aid with emotional regulation too. And and these are just the arguments that, I can make in my head, when you have a student who's going from speech to then OT to then a classroom or maybe a vocational outing, in between these, having an opportunity to move around a little bit and push and pull and squat and carry is probably going to have a beneficial, or dare I say, cathartic effect for self-regulation for the rest of the day.
Right. And the research bears that out.
Mhm.
That, you know, my dissertation was on the differential effects of physical activity on social initiations and responses,
That's perfect because
right?
I wanted to segue right into that for our last topic.
Oh, good. Yeah. So, the lit review, the literature is out there.
Mhm.
There is definitely a relation between physical activity, exercise, movement, dance, and um, uh, outcomes, beneficial outcomes in terms of behaviors. There's, there was a lot of focus on reducing self-stimulatory behaviors, which as a professional and as someone who has some experience in the field, um, I think we need to step away from that.
Yeah.
Self-stimulatory behaviors are regulatory in nature,
Mhm.
typically. That's happening for a reason,
Oh yeah.
right?
I have athletes who hop around in between sets. I'm like, yeah, great.
Sure,
I just look at that
exactly.
like active recovery in between, when
Yeah,
I'm training in between sets, I'm
right,
wandering back and forth across the gym or, wandering back and forth across the driveway when I'm at home. So yeah, I agree. I
yeah,
like the fact that um self-stimulatory or, what used to be referred to as stereotypical
mhm,
behaviors are being considered in a more
yes,
respectful light now. It's like, yeah, they need to
yeah,
do this in order to self-regulate. Great.
right,
Um, if it becomes, way too overwhelming, not
right,
for everybody else, but for them, then yeah, we might want to find some other ways to, some alternatives. But if
right.
it's they just need to get it out for 5 or 6 seconds, and wander and then come back. Okay, great. What's the problem?
Right, exactly, exactly. So I'm glad that that's getting out there more. But I think that a new direction could be the social validity of exercise
Mhm.
interventions. We really need to look at that, how the participants feel about the interventions.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that I did with my study is I looked at basically three components. I looked at they participated in autism fitness activities, and that was alternated with soccer.
Mhm.
So I did an alternating treatment design, and I looked at the social initiations and responses to a neurotypical peer
Mhm.
and a coach. So I captured so that was quantitative, right? And the other quantitative piece that I did was they wore a fancy accelerometer. So I got to measure how physically active they were in terms of light physical activity
Mhm.
and moderate to vigorous physical activity,
Mhm.
right? So then the third piece was what's the social validity? How do they feel
Mhm.
about participating um, in these two different physical activity interventions? Um, so what I found was interesting. It's not so much the activity
Mhm.
as because there was with single case design and you want to see that separation. One was better than the other,
Mhm.
and they're both in my study. They were both pretty much the same in terms of social initiations and responses and physical activity. There
Mhm.
were some differences. So autism fitness seemed to be a little bit have more uh, moderate to vigorous physical activity for
Yep.
3 out of the 4 participants. Um, but basically, the premise is if you use behavior specific praise,
Mhm.
physical visual supports, physical structure,
Mhm.
right? Time-bound activities, evidence-based practices, basically. So if you're using evidence-based practices, it really doesn't matter what you're teaching,
Mhm.
as long as you're using, a good teacher is a good teacher is a good teacher,
Yeah.
right? And so I thought that was an interesting result from the study is that, you can teach volleyball, you can teach these different things as long as you're doing it with behavior specific praise and evidence-based practices like
Yeah.
that for autism,
Mhm.
for your autism learners. It it ends up being, having good results for the participant.
Yeah, and that it speaks to the adaptive when we talk about the pack profile, the adaptive outcomes for those athletes and their desire to participate is sometimes not even necessarily based on the modality itself, which is a separate discussion, discussion entirely on which modality to choose,
Right.
but the way in which it needs to be implemented from the coaching perspective and how how educators and other professionals, coaches definitely need to approach their athletes is instrumental in the success or the relative success of the program, looking at that one aspect.
Right. And you can tell with when I was helping grade the exams and look
Mhm.
at the um, videos of the folks doing the Autism Fitness Certification,
Mhm.
you could tell the folks that were really focused on, they knew their stuff physically. They
Yeah.
knew squat,
Mhm.
they knew the task analysis, the breakdown, they
Mhm.
knew the muscle groups, they knew that exercise science, but the ones that really shined were the ones that were focused on that athlete and um, really putting those things into place so that the athlete would be successful with that and considering the adaptive component, considering the cognitive component as
Mhm.
well as the physical,
Yep.
right? And that's why I think autism fitness works so well, is
Mhm.
because it captures those it's the three critical
Yep.
pieces that go together um, to make that good pedagogy.
I could not think. I mean, we could go on for another 3 hours, and we probably should. But I would love to have you back on the pro interviews again, Dr.
Yeah.
Chrissy. If people are interested in reaching out to you, because I love having you as an ambassador for other PE and adapted PE professionals who, want that guidance and want that input, and they're like, "Oh, I found this, and and this seems like it's going to work." Where can people find you? Are you best finding you on social media, emailing you? I'll
The
put.
best way to find me is through my email.
Okay.
And
I'll
through
I'll put it down
So
below.
yeah, it's pechrissy@icloud.com.
eechrisy@icloud
Yeah.
dot
Yeah.
com.
So I think you have my school
I have
and
your school. Yes, I have your academic email.
my academic email. So I want to keep those separate. And
Yep.
so yeah, I would love to be in touch with anyone who wants to pick my brain
Mhm.
or just chat. And I learned so much from you, and I've learned a lot with my program.
Mhm.
And so I feel like it's super important for me to give back. And so I'll be adjuncting in the fall and in the spring. But
Mhm.
until then, I'm working on getting a couple publications out. And so I have some time. So if people want to reach out, I'd be more than happy to connect.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a wonderful champion of the program and being an ambassador and just someone who has who's done it to such a high level of success and to the families and the athletes whose lives you've genuinely changed. through
Thank you.
fitness and physical activity.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it because it couldn't have happened without you. Because seriously, I looked and there was nothing until 2017. And so I do. I feel like it is a movement for movement.
Mm.
And we're going to get these kids fit and we're going to get them into the community.
Mhm.
And we really need to promote that access.
Yeah, just building greater quality of life overall. So
100%.
thank you again, Dr. Chrissy. Anybody who's
Yeah.
watching, if you want to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, head on over to autismfitness.com. You can learn all about the curriculum, the pro, the expert, even the master level. Before we go, please definitely subscribe and share this video to anybody for whom you think it might make a difference. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement.